The following podcast contains spoilers and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to Animated Anarchy, the show where we take a critical look at animated movies of all kinds to determine the good and the bad. Hello again, it's been a while. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Mike.
And it's Animated Anarchy again, the podcast where you get to listen to us talk about the movies that
you may or may not have
seen. And
today's no exception.
Yes, today's we'll accept anything.
Yeah.
But how have you been, Mike?
Still breathing.
Yeah, good. Still breeding? Is it
breathing?
Oh, breathing. Okay, still breathing.
If I'm still breeding, I would have no energy to come here right now.
Yeah. And I'm still doing well. Thank you for asking. I don't know why
I didn't ask you.
Yeah, exactly. You have to think of these things before the show starts, Mike. So
I never think.
Today And today's episode, we're going to be talking about Twice Upon a Time. This is a movie that we've been wanting to talk about for the longest time.
I think since we started.
But since we started, when did this movie come out on DVD?
Well, I heard when we started doing the podcast, we started, and I was like, oh, we got to do Twice Upon a Time when it comes out on video, because I went to a screening about 2 years ago at Cinefamily in Hollywood.
Yeah. And
they had John Cordy, the director, there, and we watched the movie. It was a beautiful print, and he said that Warner Brothers was coming out with the DVD as part of their archive collection.
Yeah, and that took a long time.
It took a long time from there. It took them a year and a half.
Yeah, because they had like a release date. They said it was going to be released like spring of last year, and then that got pushed over a little bit. I can't remember because this came out
on DVD
in
like September.
It did on September, and then and we finally got a copy. Yeah. I actually accidentally got 3 copies, and I gave away 2 of them to my friends. So because it's a great movie, and I'd like them to see it. I almost bought this movie on VHS actually because that was the only way you could get it. But looking around everywhere, it's like, oh gosh, what was the least expensive copy of the movie that I saw? I think it was like $50 or something like that. Because it was like this movie was unheard of.
Yeah,
unless you were like familiar with Cartoon Network around like the 90s or something.
Because it used to air on Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater.
Yeah,
that's how that's how I first saw it. But I remember.
And I first saw it on HBO when I was like a little kid, and I was like, oh, this looks really cool, and you know, I didn't really understand a whole lot of it, but I loved the visual look of it. We'll discuss that.
It's weird. Like, my history of the movie is that I saw it on Cartoon Network, and then it just never aired again, and I was like, whatever happened to that? Because I remember seeing, I think Jeff Pigeon, the Pixar artist, he posted a picture of the characters, like he drew a picture of them, and I'm like, oh my god, I remember that movie. Whatever happened to that thing? Yeah. And excuse me. Inhaled air, which is very seldom for me.
Breathe out when you talk.
Anyway, but I went, and there was the really bad, chopped up, edited version on YouTube, and then I'm like, oh, and I was in college at the time, and they had it on VHS, and I had back in I had a VHS to DVD converter. Mm-hmm. And I converted it then, and it was really, really bad quality, really a worn print.
That's what happens when you transfer something so much. Like, the quality will just dwindle.
It was interlacing.
I've done that many times with a lot of VHS tapes that I've had.
Yeah.
So
that's what I had for a while, and it was, and then we went to the screening, and I was like, oh, it looks beautiful. It's the best I've ever seen it.
Yeah.
And then it came out on DVD, and we've been wanting to do it for the last 3 months or 4 months.
Yeah, and we basically, around the time that it was starting to get into like the holidays stuff, we decided that maybe we should start to talk about like more related subjects.
Well, first it was like, well, we've done a good movie. I forget which one it was, but we've done a good movie. We should do a bad movie to balance it out. Then we did a bad movie. Then the holidays came, and then we're like, well, we'll wait till after the holidays. Mm-hmm. And so now here we are.
Yeah, there was a lot of reasons, and I think this is a good movie to start off the new year with.
Something old, something most people haven't
which we
seen.
could have done earlier, but there's so many things that have been going on in our lives, and we never get any time.
Yeah,
so
I started working again.
Yeah, and but now that we watched it, Mike, what would you like to say about it?
Well, it's
putting you on the spot here.
I will say though, like the film isn't perfect. It's far from it.
Yeah.
But
it's been a while since I've seen it too.
Yeah.
It's last time I saw it was on Cartoon Network, and even then it was just like
that was like 10.
It was one of
ago.
It's like one of those moments where it's like, oh, I've seen this movie, I know I liked it, but I'm not really paying attention to it because like I've seen it, I like it, and I like listening to the sounds of it while I'm working or doing something like that. And watching it again though. Especially in the quality now that it's on DVD and everything. You can see
every little cut of the paper.
All the details and all the newspaper clippings that they used for background stuff and photos and everything. It's like it's a beautiful movie.
And it's so unique looking. It's so charming in its art direction and its
I would have
design.
to say it's one of a kind, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't think I know of any other kind of movie maybe TV show or a short or something like that, but not a movie that was completely done in like cutout papers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because one of the first animated films was The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, which was Lotte Reiniger. And it's done in that kind of silhouetted cut paper style, and that was done in like early.
Oh my
20s.
gosh! But
no
this
one
is the first I'm hearing of this too. So
no one really does. I mean, people have done it because usually that's the first time.
And the thing is like this kind of animation it's not new. I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, I can think of a lot of openings from Disney movies, like around in the probably 60s or something like that.
Like Merlin Jones.
The Parent Trap? Did the Parent
Trap? I
think
think
the
Parent Trap had one.
And
I know that there was a
couple. Yeah, there was a couple shorts about
Symposium
music.
of Popular Songs, and it has all these cardboard cutout. They're very silhouette-y. They're done very simply.
Oh, Noah's Ark.
Noah's Ark.
The Noah's Ark one, which was it's like I would say that's like stop motion kind of, but it's like on a flat plane on a table.
You're shooting it on a down shooter,
and it's really neat. I mean, it's neat seeing that kind of stuff. But this is like when I'm looking at it, and you were saying this earlier. It's like think about animating these things.
Yeah.
How you would basically have to keep holding your breath in because at any moment, just a stiff breeze could just toss all of that work out the window.
What happened was they used a type of paper that when it was underlit, it would practically glow. It was almost like I forget what they called the paper, but they called the process the lumage process.
Yeah.
Or the way they did it. And the thing about it was that it was so lightwait. It was practically like tissue paper and light celluloid plastic.
Yeah.
That if you put
very
down,
thin paper.
If you sighed, if you were like, it would blow the scene away.
I'm almost done.
Fuck.
Well, gotta do that over again.
And it's so meticulous. It's so, I mean.
Yeah, I almost wanted to. I wish there was a way, I wish they kind of documented or at least filmed how they did it. Or there's some sort of footage out there that they've suddenly revealed that while they were recording what it looked like when they were making it.
Yeah.
Because that kind of I've tried it myself. I've tried to do like stop motion with paper craft sort of things. Just like kind of like I should say like the Rayman-esque type of animation. Where it's just like the hands floating around and everything.
You're not actually pivoting them from a body. They're all free floating.
But with this one, it's just like they actually take shapes and they just place them down. And I mean, there's some moments where it's like you see them, they just like twist the shape. But there's some moments where it's like the animation actually is like where they mold.
It's like they pre-animate it and then they cut out the paper.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moments in this movie where you see those kind of things where it's like here are the pieces and here's the part where they just went all out.
Yeah, this is like a precursor to like it's weird because it's like I want to say that South Park is like an extremely dumbed down version of the process.
Yeah, exactly.
If you watch this movie, you'll be like, this kind of looks like South Park, but it's done so intricately. There's so much detail, and it's so.
South Park is basically talking heads. It's almost like, well, I mean, the show is made in Flash now, but it's like
or After Effects.
After Effects, right? But it is in that sort of sense of how you would animate in Flash, where it's just like a symbol of a head and just like kind of move that around and have the arms kind of like pivot from a point.
And the thing is, even like if South Park, if you notice the lip sync, how the mouths are like disjointed when they talk, they use the same thing on the characters in this movie, especially the villain, where the mouth isn't like stationary in the middle of the mouth. If they open it, they tilt it side to side, and it looks kind of like it's kind of like jittering all over.
And there are moments where it's like I'm thinking where I'm looking at the animation of the mouth, where and the head isn't moving at all. And it's like, wow, they were really good at like keeping that steady, So
yeah, because the thing is, one wrong move and everything goes to hell.
Yeah, yeah. So watching this movie, it's like I really feel for the animators, and it's so unique looking and really just very colorful, very lots of bright splotches and patterns and stuff like that.
And there's so many different Well, we'll talk about. Let's start talking about the movie.
Let's talk about it.
So the movie takes place. It's this world, and they have this Paul Frees narration at the beginning to establish the world. And there's 3 worlds or places in this movie.
They basically explain the entire idea of the movie before it started.
Right.
So
there's a world. There's the world called Din.
The real world is called Din. It's like and it's called
the Rushers of Din.
The Rushers of Din are basically like the humans, and they are the filmed aspects of this. They're in black and white, and we'll see them from time to time.
Yeah.
And this is basically the real world. And then we have Frivoli, who is the land of the dreams,
where the dreams are made,
and the land of Merc, which is the nightmare place,
and the Merc Works and
Merc
stuff.
Works. Yeah.
And there's a character we're introduced to, a character named Greensleeves, who is this little, almost like one of the
he's like the keeper of the dreams.
Yeah, and he has these little creatures called figs. Which are these little bouncing little bouncing.
And he's voiced by Hamilton Camp, who you know as Gizmo Duck
and Fenton.
Yeah, Fenton Crackshaw.
Yeah, and so they deliver these dreams to the Rushers of Din. But then the villain is a guy named Synonymous Botch.
And by Marshall Efron.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, at the end of the movie, they show, which is very rare, but they show the credits. And they show the actor with the character they played.
Yeah.
And Botch looks exactly like the actor who played him.
Yeah.
And it's so uncanny.
Yeah,
it's like, oh my God.
Well, speaking of, it's like in the beginning of this, we're also introduced to the characters that we're going to see.
Right.
And it's like we're going through the cast before the movie even starts. And like it's
like looking at a program book and seeing the players. Like the players. So-and-so is playing, Bob Cratchit. So-and-so is playing Ebenezer Scrooge.
It's really interesting. I mean, like you don't see that a whole lot in a lot of movies, like now especially. But the only one that I can think of, at least animated wise, is Robin Hood, where they introduce
the characters,
and they say it's like this is Robin Hood, he's a fox, and for this one, it's basically just going through all the characters that you're about to see, which is, Ralph the all-purpose animal, Flora Fauna, Mum, and,
and then
so it's almost
for Rod Rescue Man, it's perspiring superhero. Instead of aspiring, it's perspiring.
Yeah. And it's basically preparing you for what you're about to see.
Yeah, there's just those little moments with the characters with their names. Is like you're setting the tone of the movie.
Yeah,
just by word.
Which in some cases is like it's kind of a storytelling no.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, it's not that big of a deal. It's like this movie I would never really consider like an achievement in storytelling or achievement in, I would actually say it's an achievement in filmmaking because, when it comes to animation, it's just like everything in this is so well done.
Yeah.
And it's fun to watch. I mean, it's papercraft. It's all like little animated cutted pieces of paper moving around, and when you know how difficult animation is already, just drawing it.
Yeah.
Think of how difficult it was just to do this.
I recently just came off of a stop motion project. I was boarding on a stop motion project, and the amount of meticulous work and manual labor. Like it's not just animating; it's building. Like everything in this movie had to be
craftsmen.
It's like, I mean, even like the pictures of the Rushers of Din, they had to probably cut them out of photographs with like X-Acto knives and magazines things and photographs, and they've had to cut all the assets of the characters from different angles and props. It's a lot of work to go into these stop motion movies, and then to actually animate it is a nightmare in itself. So it's you have to appreciate it from that before you. I mean, for us, it's like we're animators, so we appreciate it at the beginning from the get go. Most people go to a movie and they don't know about any of that stuff until much later.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to, like storytelling. It's like, people don't. This is a movie that I would say is you can appreciate it as an artist because it's such a rare treat to see something like this. Because I don't know of a whole lot of other things that have tried it this way, but it's a fairly good. It's a decent story, but really what shines is everything else about it, the visuals and the look of it,
and the cast is great.
Yeah.
And another thing too is that
Lorenzo Music as as Ralph the all-purpose animal.
He did this. It was 82 that the movie came out.
Yeah, 83.
So he did this. He probably just recorded his first Garfield special at the time. He was probably better known as being Carlton the Doorman on Rhoda.
Yeah,
but he wasn't really known as that guy who does Garfield.
And it's really funny because it's like when I saw this after I saw Garfield, so it's like when I heard the Garfield voice coming out of this, it was like, oh, it looks like Garfield.
He's orange.
It's like yeah, he's orange. He's it's just another orange cat-like creature.
Yeah, but and
I don't want to say he was typecasted or anything. It's just,
but
he has a very distinctive voice, and he was really, really good. Yeah, really funny. All the lines that he delivers in this movie are just great.
Yeah,
because he has like that dry, delivery that just works so well.
He was the H. John Benjamin of his day. Like he was the one voice. Like one of
one-voiced wonder.
Yeah, the one-voice wonder where he played so many characters and he did pretty much the same exact voice for every role he did.
Yeah.
But it's perfect. It's like it fits every character that he played. Like, I mean, he was Tummy Gummy and Gummy Bears, and he was Peter Venkman, and it's all the same.
It's all the same voice, but it's a different character, but it works.
It works.
It works. It works really well.
Yeah. So we're introduced to this, and Botch is the villain,
Botch is the villain. He basically steals Greensleeves and the figs, which look like they look like the Lums from Rayman. Basically,
yeah. they look like little plums with
what they basically do is they suck up the happy magic dreams that come from frivolity, and then they go to each person at the Rushers of Din, and they just while they sleep they just give them
they're
dreams.
Like almost like little sandmen. Like
that's a good way to put that. Yeah, they're like little fairies that come in at night and give you the good dreams.
Meanwhile, Botch has a army of these amazingly designed, creepy vultures led by Rudy. The vulture.
Which is great because it's like his
the most
minions...
unintimidating name.
Yeah.
Rudy, the evil vulture with these red piercing eyes.
And he always has to send him out with like some sort of speech like...
Rudy. Listen,
Rudy, I don't ask much of you. I just want to do this one last thing. Just would you do this for me, Rudy? Would you? And you were always my favorite.
Yeah, and then they deliver what they call these things called the nightmare bombs, which are these big bombs that drop pretty much like it looks like ink clouds, and they deliver nightmares. But these vultures have captured Greensleeves and all the figs. And locked him away in the Merkworth. Meanwhile...
Makes me think of Fig Newton.
Yeah. Oh, I'm hungry now. Meanwhile, in Frivolity, where all these dreams are made, everything's happy, hunky-dory.
Yeah, they don't really give a crap about the reality or anything. Right. They're just there to make happy dreams, and there's this song like... Da, 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 da,
it's like... It feels like the beginning of a Tiny Tim song.
Yeah, you're right.
And then
all it needs is like a little ukulele or something.
And so there's all these happy elves and cows and
things.
Things.
And then there's Ralph and Mumford.
Yeah.
And this is really dumb.
And they're just like they're trying to work in this place, but they're foul ups. They just screw up everything they do.
Yeah, they're the screw ups. And they're the goofy characters that kind of make a mess of everything.
Yeah. And their supervisor just looks like Beaker from the Muppets.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, all I could think of was like me, 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 me.
But they accidentally set off a rocket and it destroys a lot of stuff, and so they're on trial. And they're sent to work in what they call the garbagerie, which is where all the garbage goes.
Yeah.
Like excess waste from making these dreams.
And we didn't mention also in between this Flora Fauna, voiced by Julie Payne. She comes in and she's basically wondering like what's going on with
her uncle,
who is
Greensleeves.
And they kind of like just brush it off because it's like they can't read letters or something.
Yeah.
It's like Flora is kind of really suspicious about everything, and she ends up in the garbagerie because they throw away all the letters that come in from Greensleeves.
Yeah.
So they all get into this garbagerie, and then they have to just send it far away.
Right.
So they just take whatever comes in the garbage and just like put it away.
Dump it on the outskirts of Frivoli.
Yeah. And they find Flora there in the garbage, and that's when Botch comes in, and he has like this. I guess what he needs is like this isn't the next part of his plan. We should mention that throughout it's going to be difficult to explain because so much happens.
It's a very disjointed and very packed, chock full. It's full of stuff. You cut back to Ralph and Mum. You cut to another character. You cut to Botch. You cut to Flora Fauna.
Yeah, it almost seems like this could have been a couple characters could have been cut from this movie.
Right.
When you think about it in a story sense, they're wonderful characters. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it's like we need to move the story along.
Like I can understand if you start with all those characters and you're on a set path, and then they all split apart and go like this, and then they all reconvene at the end, which it kind of does happen.
It kind of does,
but the problem is there's characters that are introduced in the middle of that scurry. Like there's later we introduced to the
fairy godmother,
fairy
which I honestly think is probably the least needed character in this movie.
Yeah.
And even she's voiced by Judith Kahan, who I'm trying to, because her voice sounds so familiar, but I can't remember.
She might have been famous, I think, because I thought she was she did the telephone operator. Hello.
Yeah, she does that, and
it could be her. I don't know.
She was in Ferris Bueller. And she was Grace in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and that's and so but yeah, her character shows up later in the movie when things go awry, and then it's like Ralph and Mum are there, and they basically they don't know what to do, and then the fairy godmother comes in, and it's just kind of like
it's kind of like the fairy godmother in Cinderella. She just appears.
Yeah,
a little too late.
In a sense, I mean if you want to make sense of that, but watching that happen, it's as magical as this movie is, that still comes out of nowhere. But we should explain that Synonymous Botch comes in and meets them
because he sees on Ivor, the video gorilla, which is the description of the character. He's the video gorilla.
And I have to be honest, he's my favorite character.
Yeah.
He has his lines are all basically clips from old movies and stuff like that.
Like he's a robot with like tank treads, but he's a gorilla, but he's got a TV for a screen. He looks like the monster from, what was it, Robot Monster?
Robot Monster, yeah.
Where it's just like a TV on a gorilla's head.
He kind of does.
Except he's got tire tread. He's got tank treads.
It was the monster from Robot Monster was basically a gorilla suit with like a spaceship helmet on his head
with rabbit ear antenna
with antennas on it, and it's really hilarious. And this is kind of the same idea, only he's like a treadmill giant gorilla and a TV for a face.
And he shows Botch that Mum and Ralph and Flora Fauna want to rescue Greensleeves. Mm-hmm. So he's like, I think I'm going to recruit them for my plan to help with my plan.
Yeah, so they don't find Greensleeves because he kidnapped him.
So he tricks them into helping him, supposedly to help Greensleeves, but he's really sending them out.
Yeah, so what he's doing is he's giving them entire time that he's giving them the tour of his place. You were telling me it was improv, right?
It's improv.
He's like, and here's my bat head gallery. It's where I have all my bat heads all taken away from their bodies and put in the wall here.
Look at this. This one's got a smile. Here's my stretched cat collection.
Yeah.
And over here, the undersides of movie seats. Like, he's got, like, all the worst things ever.
Yeah,
he has a closet just filled with every salami that's drying out.
I love that scene because it's like, it gives you an idea of, like, this character, and he's just so dumb and disgusting.
He's like the Grinch, in a way, that he just loves garbage and dirt and scum.
And I think that is what makes him endearing. I mean, you know, he has, like, a terrible plot for everything, but at the same time, it's like, he's just a regular doofus with a lot of dumb hobbies.
He's obviously a supervillain in a way, but he collects lava lamps and all this stuff. So he brings him into his screening room where he's got a slide projector, and it's such an awkward thing.
It's basically to explain to everyone, like especially the audience and to them, it's like, these are the Rushers of Din, and they need time.
What's time? Because they don't apparently.
Yeah, they don't know what time is, and I wish I could explain the entire monologue, because the way that the back and forth between Botch and Ralph on about time is just hilarious. It's like, what is time? 2:00, 4:00. It's like
no explanation of what time really is.
It's like, how's that supposed to explain time? It's like, okay. If you didn't know what time was, how would you
explain it? Yeah.
It's like, and they need it, but they don't have it. Yeah. Yes.
But somehow, so Mum and Ralph get sent by Botch to get the mainspring, which is in this clock, which...
this is the magical part of it. It's like this clock is basically the one clock that controls time.
It just happens to be just a cheap clock in a convenience store.
Right next to a Snoopy drawing.
A drawing of Snoopy, which my eye automatically goes to
Yeah,
Snoopy.
Exactly. It's like, that was the first thing you said when that showed up.
Snoopy!
Like, oh, Snoopy! And... but yeah, they're sent to this clock and they're looking for it, and they eventually find it, and they in between, like, showing, like, you know, they speed up time a little bit, they slow it down, and then they reverse it, and they break the clock. They ultimately break the clock, and then the spring comes out, and
they're bouncing all over Din trying to capture the spring.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Flora is at the Mercworks, and he's using her, tricking her into acting in his nightmares.
Yeah, this is how they explain how he makes nightmares. It's basically a bunch of people on these stages, and he's just recording them screaming.
It's so weird because it combines, like, Inside Out with Monsters, Inc.,
mm-hmm.
where they're filming the dreams, the nightmares,
mm-hmm.
but the screams are collected and concentrated into bombs rather than for energy, like in Monsters, Inc. They're concentrated into bombs, and then they're dropped on the people of Din.
Yeah,
the screams and
they basically collect the fear from everyone.
Right.
That
and so Flora thinks she's acting because she wants to be a star,
mm-hmm.
and so. And Mum and Ralph are just failing horribly.
Yeah, they lost the spring, and Rudy, three of the vultures that was sent out to capture it, they actually finally captured it, and now Ralph and Mum are in this stop time din.
Yeah,
and they're just meandering about, and the fairy godmother comes in and just tells them that they screwed up.
Yeah.
And
I love her design because she's got her wings on her butt.
Yeah, and they're constantly, like,
falling off. And...
Yeah, they just fly off, and she falls down, and then they come back, and, you know, she's a really funny character.
She's like a fractured fairy tale character from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
That's what I wanted to say. Like, this entire movie feels like a fractured fairy tale.
The whole thing, you're right.
Yeah, it
evokes that.
Yeah, it gives off that kind of feeling where it's like, it's a fairy tale, but at the same time, they're really, like, just...
Yeah, and it helps that Paul Frees is the narrator.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah. That kind of sets it up.
Even the designs, like the design of that fairy, of all the characters, she looks the most.
And the way she talks,
sounds like a Jay Ward character.
Yeah, almost every fairy godmother in A Fractured Fairy Tale sounds like her, I would say.
like the Jewish mother.
Yeah. It's like, all right, you messed up. Okay, well, here you go. Here's some coins, and then if you need some help, call me.
Yeah.
All right, God, you yutzes, and then she goes out.
So meanwhile, they're searching, and she thinks these two, Ralph and Mum, are inept.
She's already given up on them.
Right, like, these guys are going to do it, so I have to hire help, so... She has interviews and stuff and is trying to call people to help find it.
And she gets this guy who
Rod Rescueman.
Rod Rescueman, who voiced by James Crana. And
he's like a hero in training.
Yeah, he's like the like a Dudley Do-Right sort of character.
Yeah, but he's like a jock.
And an idiot.
Yeah.
The usual Brendan Fraser type.
Yeah. He's Brendan Fraser with all the charm of Brendan. No, but he's this kind of like he has go-to-itiveness, and he's a superhero. He flies around and stuff, but he's really
and there's a funny scene where it's like she's interviewing him, and they basically it's like, okay, I'm gonna act out as a damsel in distress. Okay, I'm
currently on fire.
I'm currently on fire. Oh, help! I'm on fire.
What did she say? Oh, my molecules are charring or something.
Yeah, something like that.
I could feel my molecules burning away.
Yeah, and he just goes like, "Ma'am, do you need rescuing?"
We heroes are polite, and the thing is, I love is that I think the best way to describe him is that he's a superhero with a driver's permit. Like he's just
he has like a hero's permit of some sort.
He's in training.
He doesn't
have his full license yet, but he's capable, or thinks he's capable, and he gets the job kind of by happenstance.
Yeah, and he comes down sort of. It's weird because it's like I don't really know if he helps them, like it helps Ralph and Mum yet.
Well, it's weird because like that section of the movie kind of just sort of it doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah,
where Ralph and Mum are lost and like what do we they
don't know where the spring is, and Rod Rescueman just kind of like sees Flora and rescues her.
He doesn't see her. He thinks because he hears from. Oh, another thing too is that the fairy godmother FGM. She prefers to be called FGM. She hates over verbiage. Fairy god, I don't know, but she had some explanation for why she prefers to be called FGM.
Yeah,
and she gives Ralph these 3 magic dimes, which really don't come in handy at all in the movie.
Not really.
He calls.
They use it once, and then they get like a phone booth that gives them like a busy dial tone.
Yeah, but it doesn't like it. They never needed the dimes. Like the dimes were never
really did
in the phone booth because they tried calling for help.
But I feel like the second time it's like all of a sudden poof, they're back on Frivoli.
Right.
So
yeah, but so Rod hears from Ralph that they're also trying to save Flora, who's in the Merc Works, and he's like, "Oh, a damsel! I love saving," because he wants the girl.
Yeah.
So he says, "Oh, I know where she is," and tricks them, and I don't know, but that part of the movie.
Yeah, that part is confusing. But basically, he saves Flora from the Merc Works stage, and then takes her back to his blimp, which is just a football shaped blimp
with an antenna on the roof and a propeller on the back. But meanwhile, it's weird because we keep saying meanwhile because it will cut from Mum and Ralph searching. Botch.
This movie has like a ton of meanwhiles when you think about it.
And meanwhile, Scuzzbopper, who we actually even talked about, he's got a writer.
That's right.
Who's
we
like
missed
a
another
jester.
character. They introduce him because he's like a jester and he is writing
the great Amerkian novel.
Yeah, and
while he's also writing nightmare scripts.
For
the dreams.
Yeah, which is like very quickly explained, but he's basically another sidekick to Merc, but he's like the unwilling sidekick.
Yeah, he's kind of like he has his own drive, his own passion, but he just happens to be working for Botch as his nightmare writer.
So throughout the entire movie, he's like making his own. He's making his own novel, which is like 3,000 pages or something.
Yeah,
single spaced.
Yeah, and he's so they introduce all these characters, and then there's a great sequence. It's the Henry Selick sequence where they somehow end up in an office building, and Rudy and all the vultures have dropped off and are preparing these nightmare bombs to be placed all over Din. Mm-hmm. So everybody's going to get affected when
now that time has stopped. There's a bunch of bombs around all the nightmare bombs in place. And
Botch
Botch is what he calls the big red one,
which is a big button that just sets off all the nightmare
It's the button
bombs.
that's going to set off all the nightmare bombs. And while Ralph and Mum are walking around the time stopped in, in the office building. Or some office building, they accidentally knock down one of the bombs, and it's a great sequence. It's like I'm honestly amazed with a lot of the effects that they pulled off in this movie because they pull off stuff like what's it called, like the glass type of look to it, where it's like things kind of like
depth of field. By putting cotton or tissue paper on the glass.
And there's a great scene in the beginning where you see the spotlight coming toward the camera, and Merc is Botch is right there. And he has like that glow
looks out
around
of focus,
him.
Yeah,
it's a great effect. I don't know why I focus so much on that, but it's like I love that look.
Yeah,
and also when the bomb like explodes, you see like the smoke come out, and it's this big dark cloud that just engulfs everything.
And I know it's weird. I know how they did it because it's the same way how they did that kind of smoke in Fantasia. Fantasia is my favorite movie, so they do it,
and the Black Cauldron,
and they do it in the Black Cauldron too. But what they did was they had when the bomb drops, this ink billows out and engulfs everything.
Yeah.
But it's all still images of these
and they do it in layers too. It's pretty neat.
So what they did was they had a big fish tank, and everything was layered, and then they would turn the camera upside down, so it looked like it was coming from the bottom. So they would pour ink into the water, and then it would drip down, paint or something. It would flush out.
Yeah, like when the ink comes down, it just kind of spreads through the water. And
which is a pain too, because the problem is if it doesn't work and you have to reshoot it, you have to drain the water out.
Yeah.
Replace them, and then you have to clean the tank, because if you don't, and if there's any murkiness in the water, it's not.
Yeah, it has to be clear glass.
You have to go in and take
something.
You have to take every single, clean every inch of that thing for dirt.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
But there's a great where all these during Ralph and Mum's nightmare, all these office supplies, tape dispensers, and scissors, and a Rolodex are out to kill them.
Yeah, and they're great. It's a great animation too, because they take like photo stills of all of these office utensils and kind of like make it where they're these menacing like creatures.
Yeah.
So it's like you have like a tape dispenser that's using its tape like a whip and like dragging itself closer.
Yeah, and my favorite
great
are the little
stuff.
The staple removers, and they're practically like little hopping piranhas.
Yeah. Which I always thought was like what they were, because so. And they have scissors, which are really neatly animated, and like the fan. Stamps, and it was a great sequence. It was really impressive. Just
really cool. So they escaped,
and that was the Henry Selick scene, right? Yeah.
And they escaped that, and then suddenly Deus Ex Machina, the fairy godmother just zaps him into Frivolity.
Yeah,
and she's like, "You're fired." And she fired. You guys are awful.
I already got someone on this.
And so but they don't give up, and they just walk to the edge of town where the Merc, there's just literally a piece of barbed wire that separates Frivolity from the Merc Works.
Yeah, that's that's the border.
So they go so they go to the Merc Works, and they all, Rod Rescue Man and Flora Fauna and all of them reconvene.
Right there at the gate. Flora fell from the blimp, and she crash lands on there, and then Rod Rescue Man is like tried to save her there.
Right.
Yeah, it's all like Deus Ex Machina again.
So they sneak into the Merc Works, and then Scuzz Bopper finishes his novel, and the most complicated scene in the movie, because the thing is, there's so many moments in the movie where there are multiple things going on, and to be an animator on one shot, 'cause it's not like you have multiple people working on one shot.
Yeah.
If there's a scene where there's multiple things going on, different characters acting, you have to make sure to keep track of every character. You can't, you can get confused, like, oh wait, I had Ralph's arm go up.
That's certainly like evident in a lot of scenes where there's a lot of characters and also a lot of things happening in the background, especially like in the clock scene.
Yeah.
There's like a ton of stuff going on around them, and then they have like hands from clocks moving around, and it's like you have to keep track of all.
On top of that, the characters, and one is walking, and you have to control the walk cycle, but the other person's acting, yet the other person's talking, so you got to do the lip sync too.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, and ultimately there's a scene where it's this tall stack of papers that Scuzzbopper has, and Botch, he's like, I finished my novel.
Let me see that.
And Botch throws it out the window.
Yeah.
And each individual sheet of paper,
yeah,
seemingly there's probably at least 60 sheets of paper on screen at once. You have to animate the paths of the paper floating down.
and also the way they look, because they have to change their shape in
Because they curve and they stop and they do this.
And they curve and curl, and they have different like colors.
They
to
move
them.
at different rates and stuff.
It was crazy to watch that. Yeah.
And whenever something like that happens, I used to turn till I would say to you or say to my friends, I would just turn and go, animate it. Do it. It's simple, guys. And so he's depressed, and you think that Scuzzbopper has hanged himself.
Yeah. They oh no, Scuzzbopper.
Hi, Flora.
Hey, Flora.
I'm just depressed.
And what is he? He's depressed because he says like he spent like it's all single spaced.
Single space, 3,000 pages.
Yeah, and then he's like, you really shouldn't do that. And he goes, I can't help it. What does he say?
I can't help it. I'm an emotional person.
So they rescue Scuzzbopper, and then Scuzzbopper, since he knows the Merc works inside and out, helps them dodge all of Botch's booby traps.
Yeah.
And so they get to the top, and Botch now knows that they're in. And then we have this big face-off.
At this point, it's Botch tells Rudy to return the clock spring because he wants to turn back time again, or time to continue as soon, so that when he presses the big red one, all of the bombs explode and everyone has nightmares. Because when it explodes, if they're still frozen, nothing happens.
Because they're not they're not sleeping, they're not alive, they're just still. Mm-hmm.
And so we have the big moment where all the characters are doing their things, doing their parts, and we have Ralph and Mumford who are going up to Botch, who is in like this this containment area,
almost like mission control. Almost.
Yeah, it's the mission control. It's where he has all the controls and the big red one.
The big red one button is right there.
Yeah, and he has like all these traps and things. It's like, hey, are you guys all right? Hang on, just stand still for a minute.
And then, of course, and while that's going on, Flora and Rod Rod rescues Flora from Ivor, the gorilla. Mm-hmm.
Which is a great scene as well.
She rescues herself.
Yeah, she does. She rescues herself because she's pulling out all the wires from his back.
Great clips. And the thing about, I just realized, do you remember the movie, remember the Robin Williams Flubber?
Oh, God, yes.
Do you remember the floating Weebo? It was the floating robot, and then the robot would open its lid, and then it would play a clip from a Disney movie in response to something Robin Williams said. Mm-hmm. Ivor is pretty much the same. They're both the same in that sense.
Yeah.
Because whenever something like... where it's like, you can't do that, and then he turns, and then it's Indiana Jones on the screen, just going, trust me, or like Darth Vader appears on the lens, and all this stuff which you probably have to pay rights for.
This is we have to say at this point, this is a movie that you really need to see
to believe
and to understand, because I don't think we're doing it justice.
We're not.
I honestly don't.
We're trying to describe this. The movie is a disjointed mess of a movie, but it's so charming and so interesting. Mm-hmm. But there's so much going on that we're just describing. It sounds like we're just describing nonsense. Right now. But
I almost wondered how did this get written or pitched or anything? It's just
it looks like they did it themselves, and then somehow
I mean the Lad Company.
But George Lucas ended up producing it.
Yeah, and George Lucas produced it, and
in the age of Howard the Duck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, George Lucas is a pure genius.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
honestly, what is the movie that we still need to see? That Strange Magic.
Oh.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I haven't seen Strange Magic yet, but this is no Strange Magic.
Yeah.
I can already tell.
I do it Twice Upon a Time needed. 45 minutes of pod racing.
Well, you see that when someone else is handling, you're a genius.
I will say though, in comparison to Star Wars or George Lucas's Star Wars and this movie, I just want to be like that guy in the interview. It's so dense. There's so much going on, which really, for Twice Upon a Time, there really is a lot going on.
There is,
but it's charming and it's not too in your face. And
I mean, still, when it comes down to it, each scene just has a couple of characters in it.
Yeah,
and it's not like
there's fun character moments in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
string
and
together.
I would say if someone who just watched the movie, I mean, I guess it really depends on your attention. Like how much attention span you have, or like how much you can understand a story. But yeah, it's easy to follow. It dumbs it down enough to give you a good idea of what the world is about. You know, it's a basic story about. Here are the people who make dreams. Here's the people that make nightmares.
It's a fairy tale, essentially.
Yeah. And here's the real world. Only we call it the Din.
And we are the rushers of Din.
We are the rushers of Din, which is kind of like a joke in itself, because what they're saying is that the rushers of Din, it's like they rush through life. They don't worry about things.
Everyone's on their way to work or on to somewhere.
Yeah, it's a busy world, which
is really we don't take time to smell the roses.
Mm-hmm. Time we don't have, and
they're rushing around because of things they don't have,
and it's in a clock.
Yeah,
and
whatever the way they describe it in the movie, but ultimately, I mean, honestly,
And there are a lot of funny lines in this movie.
Oh my god,
it's very. I mean, honestly, it's really quotable. Once you see it and you've heard the lines, it's pretty. And
speaking of lines, I noticed that we watched because. There's an interesting story about this movie. Is that
this is the next part.
Yeah,
that we were going to
the movie was originally done and it was PG. It was just it was not a kids movie, but it was appropriate. It was a universally appropriate movie. Mm-hmm. Which surprisingly, there are times in the movie. I guess it's why it's a PG rating, where even in the PG version, Botch goes, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
Or says,
like under his breath,
he's like Scuzz Bopper an asshole.
Yeah,
asshole.
Those are like the only two like curse words in this movie,
right.
I would say. So it's just, and it's funny because it just kind of comes out of nowhere.
You know why? Because it's right at the beginning of that era where they were actually giving like G and PG ratings to movies. Because only what was it, Gremlins?
Around that time period? I can't remember where it started.
Well, it was Gremlins and Indiana Jones.
Was it?
Yeah. It was those two movies. Those were the first movies to really cause the.
Huh. This is interesting. I don't know. I mean, I haven't really read up a whole lot about.
This movie's from the early '80s, and there really wasn't a rating system before then.
And you see a lot of kids' movies from the '80s. They're like really, really. I mean, you look back on them and you say like, wow, these are really.
Goonies and Monster Patrol.
They're really violent, and there's a lot of cursing, and there's no like it's hard to explain. It's just like they kind of go over this border of what they
step over the line.
Yeah.
Like even movies like it's weird that era, specifically like movies like Back to the Future and Goonies. Mm-hmm. In that era, like it treads that line.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's so unique. Like
well, the thing about a lot of like kids movies in the '80s, it's like you don't really think of it as like a bad thing. You know, it's like when they do something like someone cusses or something, it's like. That's something that happened. It's not like going overboard either, and they're just saying like, and then they're
not cursing for the sake of cursing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a reactionary word.
Yeah,
that it's just kind of like spouted out by whatever eccentric character is in there, and sometimes it's like a 14-year-old.
Yeah. Oh, so speaking of which, back to what we were saying about this movie. This movie was essentially PG. Mm-hmm. And they had it playing at college screenings. I guess it was at USC.
Yeah, they did a lot of
test
screenings in this movie.
And the co-director or the co-writer decided after seeing, because at the USC screening, everybody left after the first 10 minutes. because they thought it was. It's like the same story about Roger Rabbit.
They probably had a test to go to.
Right. It's like the same story I heard about like Roger Rabbit, where people saw the Roger Rabbit cartoon in the beginning of Roger Rabbit. Yeah. And they thought that was going to be the movie, and they were like, "Oh, we don't want this," so they walked out of the movie.
Yeah, and I feel like
You don't walk out of the movie out of the first 10 minutes.
When it comes to test screenings, I almost feel like at the beginning of it, it's like, okay, well, you're here. We're going to do this test screening. And at any moment that you feel that you do not like the movie and just want to walk out, do it. And we'll record that. And you can't really do that. That's kind of like telling people, you know, if you walk out of the movie, that's basically...
That's like you disqualifying yourself. You should sit through the movie and give an honest criticism. If you walk out of the movie, there's a whole chunk of the movie that you're not seeing.
Yeah.
You know, certain movies...
There's like a whole lot of stories about test audiences and stuff like that, where it's like they're being led into saying certain things.
Especially for kids' movies, which is such a flawed system.
Yeah, one of my favorite skits from Mystery Science Theater is the one where they do the screen testing for Earth vs. Soup, Crow's movie.
Yeah.
And it was based off of their own experiences when they made Mystery Science Theater, the movie. And they were so upset by the entire ordeal of it, they just basically made this skit to kind of like give the idea of like, what is like, okay, how many people do not like the movie? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, all didn't like the movie. All right, so who here is allergic to shellfish? All right, raise your hands. Like, it's like, what does that have to do with the movie? You know?
Yeah. So this movie, he was like, I think what this movie needs to keep the teenage or college-going crowd into it is just, we got to make it more adult. We got to put in a lot of cursing, a lot of bad language. The movie was already done. Like, they had it already lip-synced and everything.
Yeah.
They just had the actors come back in.
And just cuss.
And just rewrite the script. Like, it's essentially the same script, but just have them curse like dock workers throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
And, of course...
I made the mistake one time because I wanted to show this movie to a few of my friends. And I said, it's like, I grew up with this movie. I really loved it. And I thought it looked beautiful, had really great animation, really funny story. And then I looked it up because, like, I don't have the VHS tape or anywhere, and you can only find it like either on a torrent or something like that. And so I downloaded the file without really checking it first, and said like, oh, I'm going to show this to them.
That happens a lot with this movie.
And then when I first played it, and the first words that come out of Botcher is like, fuck, shit. It's like, that's not what I remember the movie being.
And most people think that's the original. That's why there's so much confusion.
Yeah.
And, you know, that caused
even you said they mistakenly played it on HBO with that version.
Yeah, or they did it at a children's screening. They actually played the wrong one. They got the wrong
Which
version.
is terrible. Like, why would you do that?
And the thing is, it's even confusing because you're like, you look at because on the DVD...
Oh, on the menu as well, yeah.
On the DVD,
the first one is the PG version.
It says the PG version,
which you don't really think is
the first one. The first one is the bad one, and then the second one is the director's original PG cut or something like that. And you're like, the wording is confusing.
Yeah, it is.
So you're like, which is it?
Yeah.
So
it doesn't help that it starts off with the one that had the editing in it. So it's like when you start it, you want to play the original one, right?
Yeah.
So that one, that's as soon as you put the DVD in and it goes to the menu, that's the first one that shows up. So
it's really confusing.
Yeah.
But ultimately,
I almost feel like that was intentional by whoever put this up, and it's like, oh, okay, I hate this movie. And just gonna.
At least it's out on video, damn it. But so the movie essentially, because we were at a point where everything's coming, you know, they're fighting Bosch and they accidentally press the big red one beforehand.
Early.
Mm-hmm. And they defeat Botch and they live happily ever after.
And Ralph and Mum actually make an effort to save the day in this one.
They're heroes. They end up being heroes.
They end up being the heroes.
And validating themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really essentially.
But then it's like you pointed this scene out to me. It's like we follow this old man who wakes up from. I guess he's like in the middle of a park of some sort.
He's sitting on a bench.
Yeah, and he gets up and he goes and he buys a balloon.
Like he's walking down, I guess he's in, it said the Saskatchewan, I guess they're in some Canadian theme park.
Yeah, probably.
And he's walking down, he passes by a balloon vendor, he stops after a few steps, turns around, buys a balloon, and walks away. It's the last shot of the movie.
And then the balloon shines golden.
Like the spring.
Yeah, and you were saying, it's like, what does this symbolize?
Like, what does this mean?
And it's like, and we were talking to ourselves, saying, it's like, maybe the balloon is the dream? Maybe it's like...
Maybe the man was streaming on the bench?
maybe that's Greensleeves, because we don't really see him like in the ending of the movie.
Yeah, like you don't see him, like he just kind of releases the figs and then you never see him again.
Yeah, that's it.
And
so
it's really strange, but
yeah.
But the movie,
I almost feel like that old guy in the end of the movie, the live action guy. It's like we could have. Maybe there was a hint of him in the beginning somewhere, or something that we could have seen where it was like there was a connection of some sort. But no, there really isn't any connection to it. It's just like he buys a balloon, then the balloon glows,
and then goes, yeah, and then like that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
It's an odd ending to an odd movie.
Yeah. I mean, after talking about it, it really is like there is a mishmash of stuff, and it is kind of difficult to follow.
It's so funny going in and you're like, oh my god, let's talk about this great movie. So there's this stuff. An hour later, we're like, and then the thing happens, and the guy. Oh, and this
I'm
guy,
struggling. I'm
on,
struggling with my own like my own thought process right now.
I think at this point we should really just have our final thoughts about this, because we're just going to keep going in circles. Otherwise.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
This movie, it's funny because like with the.
I mean, here's the thing about the podcast. I know that a lot of people have difficulty following us because we like to we digress a lot, and we usually go back on things and then we come forward on things, and sometimes we go back on another thing, and we're really kind of all over the place when I'm trying really hard to keep a structure to our discussions. But
this movie
this movie is really difficult to do that with, because there's a lot of great stuff to it. And there's a lot of memorable stuff to it, a lot of great characters, a lot of beautiful visuals.
Great cast.
But in terms of like a coherent story, it is kind of difficult to follow. But it does have a lot of great sequences to it, which is probably the best thing it has going for it.
I haven't had this much of a problem describing a movie since Osmosis Jones. Because
you almost fell asleep trying to explain Osmosis Jones.
Because I was just sort of like, I can't do it.
Yeah,
But I wanted to say,
because a lot of stuff happens. There's a lot of stuff that you need to explain, because
this movie's chock full of stuff.
You're introducing a world, and not only just one world. You're introducing 3 worlds. And all of these different worlds, and all of these worlds kind of like collide with each other every once in a while, and it's like, oh, all of a sudden we're in this world again, and now we're in this world, and now we're in this world which is within this world. So, like the whole thing with like going into the clock and then the nightmare and all that.
So many locations. I mean,
there's. Like once we get into Mercworks, it's like all of a sudden we're in this world where it's where he records all the screams for his nightmares, and we're being.
Then there's his screening room. Then there's his bathroom. Then there's his planning room. Then there's all his skunk where he's got all his slime plants, and then there's Rudy. There's Rudy's and the Vulture's lair, and then in Frivoli there's all these places, and then there's the fairy godmother's. She's got just a trailer held together with a balloon, held up with a balloon, and then Rod Rescue Man's got the flying football, and then there's all this stuff.
Honestly, there's a couple scenes in this movie where I think they were just had a really good idea for a visual thing. And like with the whole the skunkweed thing that he went to, like his plants, and they had like that weird effect where it's like gaseous looking, and it had like blurred spots.
I think what they did was they just put Vaseline on the camera and just moved it around.
But still, it was a visual effect that they wanted to kind of portray, and they needed they wanted to experiment with it, and they were like, okay, let's do this scene, and then. I don't know. Maybe we'll fit it in somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's a lot going in.
Yeah, it goes without saying that I feel that it also is a disadvantage for stop motion in the same way where it's like when you're boarding something, you're planning out the entire movie.
Yeah,
and the thing about storyboarding while animating it. It's like while you're storyboarding, it also goes into the animation process.
Right.
So they kind of feel comfortable with this scene enough to start animating on it. So while that's being animated on, everyone in the board department is still kind of like working on the story. And sometimes they'll reach a spot, like I think this happens a lot with features, that they need to come back to another scene beforehand, which needs to work with the scene that they're working with, and then they have to rework things.
Right.
So it's like, this scene was great at first, but now that we have this, we kind of have to fix this a little bit. Yeah. Either cut it all together or rework it so that it actually fits with the rest of it. And with stop motion, I feel it's a little bit more difficult to reanimate and edit such things, that it's kind of it has to come down to, do we really have the time and effort and money to redo this entire scene, or is there a way that we can just make this work?
Look at Hell and Back. That was a big mistake.
Yeah, and I also want to say the box trolls. Like when I was watching that movie, it's like I feel like they could have done so much more to it in terms of story, but they really had the story that they had, and they wanted to go ahead with it, and they couldn't really go back to any scenes because they had already animated it, and it took forever to do that.
And another thing too about stop motion is that, unlike, say, now with digital it's different, but with stop motion, once you're done animating something, usually when a scene or a sequence is done, they need to make room for more sets, so they destroy or dismantle the set.
That's true.
So if you have to go back and reanimate something, that's you having to go back and rebuild the set or get all the props and put them in the right place again. Yeah. In this movie,
but I don't know if it's that so much with this one.
Because it's true. But I mean, like, this movie, if it was made today, the whole movie could have been done easily in After Effects. Yeah. Like, there's so many things that look like this movie today. Like a lot of, essentially shows like Rick and Morty and BoJack and Bob's, in a sense,
I will
have
to say that Flash is kind of like,
this is a precursor to Flash.
This
movie.
Right. So I mean, like, Flash basically has kind of made this style of animation that is in Twice Upon a Time kind of null. Flash kind of made it easier to do this kind of animation, and I honestly I like to think of this movie as a real accomplishment, that all the animators and the people that were involved in it really did a great job with what they were given, and it looks beautiful. It could have had a better story. Or they could have maybe they could have boarded it better or written it better. I don't know, or maybe there was too much improv. I don't know what it is, but for what it is right now, I still think it's a great accomplishment, and it's easily on one of my top favorite movies.
Same
list.
And you have to you don't really realize it, because this movie isn't, along with movies like Cats Don't Dance, it's not a household name movie. No one, you pick someone, it's like, oh, have you seen Twice Upon a Time?
It's rare to find. It's taken them this long to actually get them on DVD. So,
and look at what it's inspired. I mean, thinking in my head about how many shows it inspired. The one show that comes to mind, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. It's everything, the textured everything and all that stuff, right out of this movie. Yeah, and most Flash animation, I think, to an extent, can do this. I mean, especially nowadays with After Effects, where you can have textured masks and things. Oops, I just dropped my phone out of my pocket. I didn't even mean to do that. It just slipped right out.
But there have been advancements in the in the way that you can animate in this style. Yeah. That you could easily do it on the computer and everything, in Flash and After Effects and all that. But just to see it, it's like,
no computers in this movie.
But yeah, in this movie, it's like you could see it. You could really see the textures. You could actually feel like, sometimes I feel like, like these characters are made of felt or something, and you can really touch them. And when they move around, you also see how the blotches on the color kind of move around a little bit.
Pieces of textured paper,
and that also helps with it. That helps both the illusion of motion and also the realistic look of the pieces. Yeah. So I just, if you get a chance, I would seriously recommend this movie.
Yeah, and we'll tell you, the movie just came out on it. Well, it didn't just come out, but it recently came out on DVD. You can order it. Did you get it through?
I got it through Amazon. I got it for like $12 on Amazon.
Yeah, it's pretty
so
cheap. If you get it on Amazon, it just came out. Or through the Warner Brothers DVD website.
Yeah,
which is where they essentially, because they just recently released a whole bunch of obscure animated films.
And I'm really, really happy that this movie is finally out because it looks beautiful. It was nicely, I wouldn't say restored, but it's
well, it came from the original work print that they had.
Which really helps. I mean, if you see it in any other definition, it's not as good. You really miss a lot of the details and everything.
Yeah, like on YouTube or something.
Yeah,
which is ripped from played over
VHS to VHS to VHS, and
yeah.
Probably was on HBO recorded or from Cartoon Network.
Like the Cartoon Network, the one I saw on Cartoon Network looked like garbage.
Yeah.
It looked like, I remember it not looking nearly as good.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I remember a lot of stuff to it, but it's like when I finally watched it on DVD, it's like I saw like all the little details that were just, things that I missed. And it's a beautiful movie. Really, you should really just watch it.
Do it.
Yeah, do it. Do it.
Do it right now.
Yeah. Now. Go now. I'll be here reading an adult newspaper. And so that's a review of Twice Upon a Time, and I guess we will begin our ending to this. So recently I have changed my Patreon, which used to be just specifically for my webcomic. And I have reworked it and changed it to a new Patreon, which will support all of my projects and endeavors that that I will be involved with. That includes videos, that includes the webcomic, and it includes this podcast. And what I am asking from folks, if they would like to help support the show and my works, because it's under my name. I'm sorry, Mike. I couldn't fit you under. I couldn't say Andrew Dickman and also Mike Ruocco, who is on the podcast.com. No, it's on patreon.com/Andrew Dickman. And when you go there, you can choose to support the podcast specifically. And from what I remember off the top of my head, and I should have probably put this in front of me when I was talking about it, $1 goes a long way. And if you just support $1 a month, and you can change it anytime you want. And I do believe that there's also a $5 tier that will get you extra content whenever we get to it, and it will be sent like we'll have like special podcasts that we'll record just specifically for your ears a month early, or probably 2 months early or something, that before we actually release it. And you will be able to get that direct to your email and listen to it to your leisure. So when you support us on that tier, you will get that stuff. And also there are also other tiers if you want to support my work or the videos that I make or the web comic and whatsoever. So if you want to go there, remember it's patreon.com/Andrew Dickman. And also please like us on iTunes and or give us 5 stars on iTunes and Stitcher. You can find Animated Anarchy on both of those places. And just give us a favorable review if you like the show, and we will continue making quality content for you. As I say quality content, I'm kind of like trying to see if I can make a better word than quality. A decent content. Satisfactory content.
Digestible content.
Yeah, as best as I can offer content. iTunes and Stitcher. And also, like us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, which is the best place to get in contact with the show if you want to write a letter to us or suggest we've been getting some more suggestions about movies, and I'll have to look those up and see if that'll be our next episode. Please keep in mind, not every suggestion will be made into an episode. I mean, we do this we try to do this once a week. The best case scenario is like we try to do it bi-weekly, but at the most we like to try to do this at least once a week and try to get as much content to you as possible. But we are on Facebook, facebook.com/animated anarchy cast. And you can also find us on Twitter. I am at AWD Twit, and
I'm at a guy who draws.
And you can find us there if you'd like to follow our individual Twitter accounts, and but if you want to get in touch with the show itself, it'd be best to go to the Facebook page. Yeah. So with that said, that is another episode well done.
Yay.
Hey, and Twice Upon a Time was a great movie. You should definitely see it.
Buy the video.
Support
the filmmakers.
Yes, and we will be back next time for another great, decent, as good as it gets quality podcast. Satisfactory.
Digestible podcast.
Digestible. It's like if you want to inject the podcast into a pill, and then swallow that with a glass of water and see us in the morning.
It's like, what is it? I remember seeing at a store they sell something, I forget what it's called, like digestive biscuits. Like it's a British thing. It's like
as opposed to what?
I mean, it's just like it's a name given to a type of biscuit or cracker that's just like you eat it. And it's I don't know, but it was something that's it's supposed to be good for digestion, like it's fiber.
Oh, okay.
But it's like a digestible biscuit.
Yeah, but I mean,
or something
as
like
opposed to a undigestible biscuit, which is just made of metal
or made of wood shavings.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a way to start off the new year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great. Everyone have a great 2016. Or start through 2016. Yeah. We'll see you on the next podcast. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Mike.
And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Spy.
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 Versus spy.